our first question was, what do you want to know and be able to do before you graduate? And our table came together. We had a bunch of diverse different students, and we came up with ensuring that we had functional skills that could be applied to the real world. So certain skills like financial literacy, balancing a checkbook, knowing what a W-2 form is. Simple things like this are things that as students we don't get to fully understand until we have to beg our parents to tell us how to actually do it. But not only financial literacy, but also certain skills that can be applied to the real world very easily, like registering how to vote, and knowing where to go to vote. And these things can be incorporated into our social studies classes, and we are talking about how in college they have these social sciences that have a variety of different skills and topics that you can learn about, and we can truly use that and go into our social studies classes and maybe spend a unit or a chapter or two about learning about these skills, or incorporating it into like a home and careers type of class. But another skill that we also wanted to do was civic engagement, which is I think and all of us agreed that is of utmost importance to becoming a global citizen and an active citizen of society in general. Because civic engagement encompasses knowing where to go and how to vote, being an active citizen, and being able to voice your opinions about what you believe in. And also knowing about current topics and events that are going on in the real world today, and knowing what your passions are in life and how you think that you can solve it. So those are some of the skills that we came up with, and Jenna's going to talk about how we can use that in our own curriculum and incorporate it.
Right, so we talked about all these things, but how we are going to implement them is a really big question. So we're talking about a more holistic approach to our education, and what that means is having a subject area. So let's take social studies, for example. So we know social studies is history encompassing world history, US, et cetera, et cetera. So if you take social studies at the high school level, it's just an area of like study with all those things under it. But at the collegiate level, social studies is encompassing law, philosophy, economics, and politics. So if we were to have like a social studies requirement, that's not a world history requirement or a US history requirement. That's 4 years of social studies, and if it's something broad like that, we could put benchmarks along the way across those 4 years, and then if it's so broad, we could integrate things like financial literacy. You could have a quarter on that. Civic engagement, it would be less structured, so you could implement more real-world skills into that. We also talked about AP style classes versus Regents classes. So speaking from personal experience, I took AP World my sophomore year, studied really hard. I got a 5 on the AP. I got an 83 on the Regents, so that doesn't really add up. And that's because Regent style classes teach specific style questions. You all have a teacher that said, remember this question is going to be on the Regents. But learning like that isn't helping you become a better, more rounded human. It's just memorizing recall tests, and that's not a good skill we want to have for the future. At least in my experience at my school, AP classes are really holistic. You talk about trends over time, how one event impacted the rest of the world and this specific group of people, and what trends it laid for their future generations. So there's like a whole elitist thing where like kids in AP classes, oh, it's super hard, it's super structured. It's actually the exact opposite, at least at my school. I go to Oceanside. So I think that style like that, where we're talking more about the impacts of something instead of the specific details, would be a lot more beneficial to both Regents and AP students alike.
There's one more thing that we forgot to mention, is that we need graduation requirements, but they don't necessarily equal the skills and the functional skills that we can use in society today. And that's so important because kids who want to go into a vocational trade and don't want to follow the usual university path need to be able to know certain skills like this, and don't necessarily need them to be incorporated into their graduation requirements, but need them to be small little skills that they can use in their own daily lives. Do you have anything?